My name is Natalie Mercer. I was 36 years old when my family laughed at my bakery during my brother's rehearsal dinner. And the moment my mother said, "Natalie, don't embarrass us by pretending cupcakes make you a businesswoman," I already knew his wedding would not end with cake. It would end with contracts, screenshots, bank records, and the truth about the $86,000 he stole using my name. The strange thing about public humiliation is that it does not always feel loud when it happens. Sometimes it feels quiet, almost soft, like the air leaving a room through a crack under the door. That night, I was standing in the private dining room of Bellafiore, the most expensive Italian restaurant in our county. I was wearing a black dress I had bought on clearance 3 years earlier. There was a small dusting of flour on my left sleeve because I had come straight from my bakery after 14 hours of work. I had baked, filled, boxed, labeled, and chilled desserts for my brother Brandon's wedding until my feet ached and my hands smelled permanently of vanilla and lemon zest. And still, when I arrived, my mother looked at me like I had tracked mud across a cathedral. "Natalie," she whispered, smiling only with her mouth. "Could you at least try to look like you belong here?" I looked down at my sleeve. A little flour, that was all. Not blood, not grease, not dirt, flour. The thing paying for the dessert table everyone would be praising the next day. I brushed it off and said, "Sorry, Mom, I came straight from the bakery." She sighed. That disappointed little sigh mothers use when they want you to know you have failed, without giving you enough to argue with. The room was full of candlelight, wine glasses, white linen, and people who had never once woken up at 3:30 in the morning to check whether brioche dough had overproofed. My brother Brandon sat at the center of the long table beside his bride, Marissa Vale. She looked perfect in a cream silk dress and pearl earrings. Brandon was 2 years younger than me, but my parents had always treated him like a future king, temporarily inconvenienced by reality. He had our father's smile, our mother's confidence, and no visible relationship with consequences. When he saw me, he lifted his wine glass. "There she is," he said. "The dessert department." A few people laughed. I smiled because I had been trained to. Marissa's cousin, a woman I had met twice, asked me politely, "So, Natalie, what do you do?" "I own Mercer Rye Bakery," I said. Before I could say anything else, Brandon leaned back in his chair and laughed. "Owns is generous," he said. "She bakes cookies. It's cute." That word, cute. I had heard it for 12 years. Cute when I rented the church kitchen for $20 an hour. Cute when I sold out at the farmer's market in the rain. Cute when I opened my first storefront with 2 used ovens and a loan that made me sick to look at. Cute when I hired employees. Cute when I landed my first hotel contract. Cute when brides booked me a year in advance. To my family, my business was only real when they needed something from it. My mother lifted her glass and gave the final cut. Natalie has always had her little hobbies," she said. "But tomorrow is about Brandon and Marissa, so let's not turn the evening into a farmer's market." The table laughed. Not everyone. Some guests only looked down at their plates. Some smiled awkwardly. Some pretended to adjust their napkins. But enough people laughed that the sound filled the room. I looked at my brother. He was grinning. That was when something inside me went very still. I did not know everything yet. I did not know about the forged contract waiting for me at the venue. I did not know about the group chat. I did not know about the redirected charges or the deleted password emails or the check from Marissa's grandmother. But I knew the shape of the night. I knew my family had mistaken my silence for permission again. And I knew somehow, that this time they had gone too far. I did not grow up dreaming about sugar flowers or wedding cakes. I grew up in a 3-bedroom ranch house outside Asheville, North Carolina, with parents who believed success looked like a desk, a tie, a retirement plan, and a last name people respected. My father, Richard Mercer, spent 34 years managing operations for a hardware distribution company. He was practical, quiet, and allergic to emotional conversations. My mother, Diane, worked as an office administrator at a dental practice and treated appearances like a second religion. Then there was Brandon. Brandon was handsome before he was kind, charming before he was honest, and forgiven before he was sorry. When he crashed my father's truck at 17, my parents said accidents happen. So when he dropped out of college after 3 semesters, they said he needed time to find himself. When he borrowed $5,000 from my grandmother and never paid it back, they said Grandma should not have offered if she could not afford it. When I moved out at 19 and worked 2 jobs while taking night classes in business administration, they said I had always been independent. Independent. That was family language for, Natalie does not need help. Brandon needs support. Natalie needs to understand. Brandon needs another chance. I started baking seriously at 24 after losing my office job during a restructuring. At first, it was survival. I sold cinnamon rolls to neighbors, birthday cakes to coworkers from my old office, pies through a church bulletin, anything people would buy. The first year, I made $11,000 and cried over my electric bill twice. The second year, I made enough to rent the back kitchen of St. Mark's Church on weekdays. The third year, I signed a lease on a tiny storefront between a laundromat and a vape shop. Mercer Rye Bakery opened on a rainy Tuesday morning with 6 display cases, 2 ovens that smoked when they preheated, and a hand-painted sign my best friend Elise helped me hang crookedly over the door. Elise was a bookkeeper by profession and a pessimist by personality, which made her the perfect friend for a new business owner. She was the one who told me, "You can cry after you reconcile the receipts." That became our motto. And I did reconcile them, every night. Flour, butter, sugar, payroll, packaging, merchant fees, delivery costs, wedding deposits, vendor invoices, sales tax. I knew my numbers because my numbers were the difference between survival and closing the doors. 12 years later, Mercer and Rye was not huge, but it was mine. I had 8 employees, 2 delivery vans, a wholesale contract with 3 boutique hotels, a commercial kitchen I had built out myself, and a wedding calendar booked 9 months in advance. But to my family, I still played bakery. My mother would introduce Brandon as our son, the entrepreneur, even when his latest venture was a website that sold motivational planners nobody bought. She introduced me as Natalie. She makes cakes, not owns a business, not employs people, not built something from nothing, makes cakes. The trouble started 3 months before Brandon's wedding. My mother called me on a Tuesday morning while I was piping chocolate ganache onto 200 eclairs for a corporate lunch order. "Natalie, sweetheart," she said, using the tone that meant she wanted something. I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear. "What's up?" "You know Brandon and Marissa are under a lot of financial pressure with the wedding." I closed my eyes. The wedding was being held at the Hawthorne Estate, a restored manor house on 60 acres with glass chandeliers, stone archways, formal gardens, and prices that made normal people reconsider love. "Okay," I said carefully. "Marissa's family is helping, of course," Mom continued, "but Brandon wants to contribute too, as a man." That phrase almost made me drop the piping bag. As a man? You know what I mean. He wants to feel proud, so I was thinking, and maybe you could do the cake as your wedding gift. The cake? Just the cake. I knew better. There is no such thing as just the cake at a wedding like that. But I asked, "How many guests?" 240. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because my body needed somewhere to put the pressure. "Mom, a custom wedding cake for 240 people is not small." "I know, honey. That's why it would mean so much." There it was. The hook wrapped in family. I told her I would think about it. She called again that night. Brandon called the next morning. Marissa emailed inspiration photos before lunch. By Friday, the cake had become a dessert table. By the following week, the dessert table included miniature fruit tarts, lemon bars, chocolate mousse cups, almond macarons, custom sugar cookies painted with their initials, and late-night cinnamon rolls for guests leaving after 10. Then came the packaging, then the display rentals, then the delivery team, then the request that I not place Mercer and Rye cards on the table because Marissa wanted a clean luxury aesthetic. Retail value, $14,700. My gift, Brandon sent me a thumbs-up emoji when I emailed the final production list. Not thank you, not this means a lot, just a blue thumb. I told myself not to be petty. That is what people like me do. We call our accurate reactions petty so we can keep tolerating what hurts us. 2 months before the wedding, strange things started happening in my accounts. Nothing dramatic at first. A linen vendor emailed asking if I wanted to confirm the revised billing authorization. I had no idea what that meant. I forwarded it to Marissa's planner, who replied, "Handled, thank you." A week later, my bakery's business card showed a temporary authorization for an event logistics company I had never hired. It disappeared the next day, so I assumed it was a processing error. Then my merchant account sent a login alert at 11:48 p.m. on a Sunday. I was asleep. I changed the password Monday morning. The password reset confirmation went to my email, but later that day, I found a second reset message sitting in the trash folder. That bothered me. I asked my assistant manager, Lena, if she had accessed the account. She said no. I asked Elise to check user activity when she had time. She said, after payroll, "I'll dig." We were both busy. That is the thing about small business. You do not ignore warning signs because you are careless. You ignore them because the oven is broken, the bride changed her flower colors, an employee called out sick, butter went up 18%, and the health inspector is coming Thursday. A month before the wedding, Brandon stopped by the bakery. He rarely came unless he wanted free coffee or a box of pastries to take somewhere and pretend he bought them. That day, he walked behind the counter like he belonged there. "Can I use your office computer for a second?" he asked. "Mom needs me to print seating chart updates and my laptop's dead." I was kneading dough and did not think twice. "Fine, don't mess with anything," he laughed. "Relax, Nat, it's a computer. Not Fort Knox." I should have heard that sentence louder. I should have remembered it. He was in my office for 12 minutes. When he came out, he had no printed seating chart. "Printer jammed," he said. "I'll do it later." Then he took a blueberry muffin from the case and left. I logged him out of the computer an hour later when I noticed he had left the browser open. There was nothing obvious on the screen. No bank account, no vendor portal, just my email inbox. I closed it. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was believing my family would never cross from entitled into criminal. Mistake number 3 was thinking those were different things. The week of the wedding was brutal. We produced desserts for Brandon and Marissa while still fulfilling regular orders. My staff worked overtime. I slept on the office couch twice. My hands cracked from washing. My back ached from lifting flour sacks. On Wednesday, my mother came in to check progress, which meant criticize the ribbon shade on the cookie boxes. "This gold looks more yellow than Marissa wanted," she said. "It matches the sample she approved." Mom pursed her lips. "Well, you know brides. Details matter." I wanted to say, details cost money. Instead, I said, "We'll make it work." She wandered through the kitchen, looking at trays of macarons and sugar flowers. "You know," she said casually, "it must be nice having a business card for all this. The points alone." I looked up. "What?" "The business card. I assume you get points." "Some. What's the limit on a card like that?" I stopped rolling dough. "Why?" She laughed too quickly. "No reason." "Just curious. Your father and I never had business accounts." I stared at her. She touched a tray of cookies. "Careful," I said. "Those are still drying." She pulled her hand back like I had slapped it. "You're so tense lately, Natalie." "I'm tired." "Well, this wedding is important to your brother." There it was again. The invisible scale, my exhaustion on one side, Brandon's importance on the other. I always knew which side my mother would choose. The rehearsal dinner was Friday night. By then, the dessert components were finished, stacked in labeled racks inside my walk-in cooler, waiting for early transport to the Hawthorne estate the next morning. I left the bakery at 6:42 p.m., changed in the staff bathroom, and drove straight to Bellafiore with flour still on my sleeve. That was where they laughed. That was where my mother called my business a hobby. That was where Brandon stood near the end of dinner, tapped his glass with a knife, and gave a speech thanking everyone who had helped make his wedding possible. He thanked Marissa's parents for their generosity. He thanked my parents for raising him to understand family. He thanked the groomsmen for the bachelor weekend. He thanked the venue staff by name. He thanked the florist. He thanked the photographer. He thanked the band. Then he looked at me. "And Natalie," he said, smiling, "thanks for the cupcakes. Try not to put your little bakery logo everywhere tomorrow, okay? We don't need free advertising at my wedding." People laughed again. My mother looked pleased, like he had made a charming joke instead of a small public cut. I folded my hands in my lap under the table. My nails dug into my palms. Brandon lifted his glass. "That's my sister. Always useful." Useful. That word did not sting. It clarified. I was not hurt because he said it. I was hurt because he was right about how they saw me. After dinner, Marissa pulled me aside near the hallway bathrooms. "Natalie, I just want to make sure tomorrow goes smoothly," she said. "So do I. The dessert table has to be ready before cocktail hour. The photographer wants detail shots." "It will be. And please make sure your staff wears black. No bakery aprons in photos." "My staff always dresses professionally for events." She smiled in that soft, polished way of hers. "I know. I just want everything elevated." Elevated. That was Marissa's favorite word. She used it when she meant expensive. As I was leaving, I passed my father near the valet stand. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't take Brandon too seriously," he said. "He's nervous." "He called me useful in front of everyone." Dad sighed. "You are useful, Nat. That's not an insult. Some people in this family keep things running." I looked at him under the yellow restaurant lights. "Do they ever get thanked?" He looked uncomfortable. "Don't start tonight." I nodded. That was the last time my father spoke to me before the wedding. The next morning, I arrived at the Hawthorne estate at 6:10 with 2 delivery vans, 3 employees, and enough sugar to ruin every diet in the county. The estate looked like something out of a bridal magazine. Stone walls covered in ivy, long gravel drive, white tent glowing on the lawn, garden chairs lined for the ceremony, with staff moving like ants through morning mist. I was unloading cake tiers when the venue coordinator approached me. Her name was Celia Ward, mid-40s, gray blazer, hair pinned back, clipboard in hand, the kind of woman who had solved 12 problems before breakfast and expected everyone else to keep up. "You're Natalie Mercer?" she asked. "Yes," she looked at her clipboard. "We need to settle your outstanding balance before kitchen access." I thought I had misheard her. My outstanding balance? For refrigeration, staging labor, kitchen use, extended cleanup, and vendor insurance adjustment. I wiped my hands on my apron. "I'm not renting the kitchen. I'm delivering desserts." Celia's expression changed slightly. Not surprise, recognition. Like a puzzle piece had clicked into a place she did not like. "Come with me," she said. She led me through a side entrance into a small administrative office near the service hallway. She opened a folder and placed a contract in front of me. There was the Hawthorne Estate logo at the top. There was my business name, Mercer Rye Bakery. There were line items, kitchen access fee, cold storage fee, staging staff, post-event cleaning, late pickup deposit, total $8,600. At the bottom was my signature, except it was not my signature. It was a drawing of my signature. The N was too sharp. The M in Mercer slanted wrong. The final R looped in a way I never wrote it. I stared at it. "I did not sign this." Celia said nothing. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. "Who submitted it?" Celia checked her tablet. The document was uploaded through the wedding portal by Brandon Mercer. For a moment, I only heard the refrigeration unit humming behind the wall. Then I asked, "When?" 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, around the time my merchant account sent that Sunday night login alert. I took another photo. Celia lowered her voice. "Ms. Mercer, I flagged this internally because your listed vendor role did not match the billing responsibilities. I emailed the planner twice. I was told the family had worked it out." "The family did not work it out with me." Celia's eyes held mine. "I understand." That was when I knew she believed me. Not because she knew me, because she had seen enough rich events to recognize when someone was using a vendor as a shield. I paid the charge on my business credit card because my staff was outside with desserts and the wedding was already moving around us like a machine. But as the payment processed, something in me hardened. Not broke, hardened. I texted Elise, "Need you at Hawthorne Estate now. Bring laptop. Possible fraud. Not exaggerating." She replied in under 10 seconds. On my way. Back in the service hallway, my team began assembling the dessert table. I kept my face calm because employees watch the owner before they panic. If I shook, they would shake. At 8:15, while I was placing sugar flowers on the cake, a woman approached me from the hallway. She was about 30, with auburn hair and a bridesmaid robe half-zipped over leggings. "Are you Natalie?" she whispered. "Yes, I'm Chloe, Marissa's maid of honor." I braced myself for another request. More gold ribbon, different tray placement, no logo, but Chloe's face was pale. "I think you should see something." She held out her phone. At the top of the screen was a group chat. Wedding rescue team. Participants: Brandon, Marissa, Diane Mercer, Richard Mercer, Chloe, 2 groomsmen, and the wedding planner. I looked at Chloe. She swallowed. "I thought it was just planning stuff. Then last night, after what he said to you at dinner, I went back and read it differently." I looked down at the phone. The messages were from 6 weeks earlier. Brandon wrote, "Nat won't notice if we run some charges through the bakery account. She never checks until month end." My mother wrote, "Don't make it sound like stealing. She can afford it. She has no kids." My father wrote, "Your sister has always been better with money. She'll figure it out." Marissa wrote, "As long as the estate gets paid. I'm not walking into a cheap wedding." Brandon wrote, "I still have her vendor login from Mom's birthday order. I can route some deposits through Mercer and Rye and reimburse later." The hallway seemed to tilt. I kept scrolling. There were screenshots of my vendor dashboard, a photo of an invoice with my signature, a note from Brandon. "Use this signature close enough." Another from my mother. "Natalie is sensitive. Don't tell her before the wedding or she'll make it about herself." Another from Marissa. "I just need this handled before Friday." Another from Brandon. "She owes me one decent gift." I heard my own breath. Slow in, slow out. I took my phone and photographed Chloe's screen. Message after message, date after date, name after name. Chloe whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have shown you earlier." I looked at her. "You're showing me now." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know it was this much." "How much do you think it is?" She hesitated. Brandon said around 30. 30. My family had discussed stealing $30,000 from me like it was an inconvenient seating chart. I thanked Chloe and told her not to delete anything. Then I walked into a linen closet, closed the door, and stood in the dark for exactly 90 seconds. That was all I allowed myself. 90 seconds to feel sick. 90 seconds to want my mother, not the mother I had, the one people are supposed to have. Then I opened the door and went back to work. Elise arrived at 9:05 wearing jeans, sneakers, and the expression of a woman prepared to ruin someone's day with spreadsheets. She hugged me once, hard. Then she said, "Show me." We set up in Celia's administrative office. Celia gave us Wi-Fi, coffee, and access to printed vendor records after I signed a statement saying I disputed the charges. Elise logged into my business accounts with me sitting beside her. What she found in the first 20 minutes made my hands go cold. A floral deposit had been billed through a linked vendor profile associated with Mercer and Rye. $7,400. A transportation company had charged my business card for guest shuttle service. $5,800. Custom favors from a boutique printer. $3,900. Lighting rental was $6,200. Additional photographer coverage. $4,600. Open bar surcharge, $12,000, a partial tent upgrade, $9,500, kitchen fees, $8,600, event insurance adjustment, $2,100, cleanup deposit, $3,800, and smaller charges scattered like breadcrumbs, linens, glassware, extra ice, after-hours staff, security, a generator. Each one explained away in vendor notes as approved by family contact. Family contact. Brandon. Elise kept a running total on a yellow legal pad. When she finished the first pass, she circled the number. $86,240. I stared at it. $86,240. That was not a misunderstanding. That was not a family favor. That was payroll, rent, insurance, quarterly taxes, supplier invoices, my employees' health stipends, my January slow season cushion, my entire safety net. Elise leaned back. "Natalie," she said quietly, "this is coordinated fraud." I looked at the wall clock. The ceremony was scheduled for 4. Guests would start arriving at 3. It was 10:12 in the morning. "What can we prove?" I asked. Elise looked at me for a moment, then she smiled without warmth. "Everything. We printed contracts, screenshots, merchant logs, login timestamps, card statements, vendor invoices." Celia printed the Hawthorne upload record showing Brandon had submitted the forged agreement. Chloe forwarded screenshots of the group chat to my email and then, at Elise's instruction, exported the entire chat thread. At 11:40, Elise found something else. She had moved beyond my accounts and was reviewing documents Chloe forwarded from the wedding chat, including a photo Brandon had sent of a check. "Elise," I said, watching her face change. "What?" She turned the laptop toward me. It was a scanned deposit image. A check for $25,000 from Marissa's grandmother, Evelyn Vale, made payable to Brandon Mercer and Marissa Vale. Memo line, house down payment, deposited into Brandon's personal account. 2 days later, there were outgoing payments, some to credit cards, one to a company labeled Pinnacle Sports Analytics. Elise clicked into it. Not analytics, a betting platform operating under a corporate payment name. "Brandon gambles?" I asked. "Apparently enough to hide it badly," Elise said. I looked at the deposit again. "Does Marissa know?" Elise's silence answered. I thought of Marissa in her pearl earrings, obsessed with an elevated wedding, willing to let my business carry charges she did not want to see. I did not feel sorry for her, not yet. But I understood something important. Brandon had not only used me, he had been using everyone. People like him do not have one victim. They have a rotation. At 12:30, my mother came into the service hallway. "Natalie," she said sharply, "why is your bookkeeper here?" I was holding a tray of lemon bars. I turned slowly. "Why do you ask?" Her eyes flicked toward the office. "This is Brandon's wedding day. Please do not create tension." I looked at her carefully. There are moments when you give someone one final chance without telling them that is what it is. "Mom," I said, "did you know Brandon submitted a contract with my signature on it?" Her face did not show surprise. It showed irritation. That hurt more. "Natalie, not now." "Did you know?" She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Your brother was trying to manage a very complicated event." "With my forged signature?" She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "You always make things sound uglier than they are." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because she had just told me everything. "You knew," I said. She straightened. "I knew Brandon needed help. I knew you were in a better position than he was. I knew this family has carried you in ways you never acknowledge." I stared at her. "Carried me? You think because you work hard nobody else does? Brandon has pressure you don't understand, a wife, a future, expectations. I have employees. You have cupcakes." There it was again. The contempt boiled down to one sentence. I set the tray down. "Mom, listen to me carefully. If you knew he was using my business name without authorization, you need to stop defending him." Her face changed, not fear, anger. "You will not ruin your brother's wedding over money." "No," I said. "Brandon did that." She stepped back as if I had slapped her. Then she said, "You have always been jealous of him." That one almost got through. For a second, I was 8 years old again, watching Brandon blow out candles on a cake I helped decorate, while my parents clapped like he had invented birthdays. Then Elise appeared in the doorway behind me. "Diane," she said, calm as a closing bank, "you should probably stop talking." My mother looked at her like she had smelled something sour. "This is family business." Elise held up a folder. "No, it's business. My mother left. The wedding proceeded. That is the part people always ask about later. Why did you let the wedding happen? Because the truth needed witnesses. Because my desserts were already there. Because my staff deserved to finish the job they were paid for. Because if I had confronted Brandon in a hallway, he would have spun the story before sunset. He would have told everyone I was emotional, jealous, bitter, trying to sabotage his happiness. So I did what I had learned to do in business. I delivered what I promised. Then I invoiced reality. The ceremony was beautiful. I will not lie. The gardens looked golden in the late afternoon light. Marissa walked down the aisle carrying white roses and looking like every bridal magazine she had ever saved. Brandon cried when he saw her, and people around me whispered, "Oh, how sweet." I wondered how many men had cried at weddings while hiding debt. Maybe more than anyone wants to know. My father walked my mother to her seat. She did not look at me. I stood near the back with my staff because there was no family seat reserved for me. That felt appropriate. After the ceremony, guests moved into cocktail hour. The dessert table was unveiled at the edge of the ballroom beneath a crystal chandelier. It was stunning. 4-tier almond cake with raspberry cream, miniature fruit tarts glazed until they shone like jewels, and chocolate mousse cups topped with gold leaf Marissa insisted on and did not pay for. Sugar cookies painted with tiny white roses, macarons stacked in champagne towers, cinnamon rolls waiting for late-night service. A woman in a blue dress took one look and said, "This is incredible. Who made it?" My mother, standing nearby with a glass of champagne, answered, "A local bakery." A local bakery. Not my daughter, not Natalie, not Brandon's sister. A local bakery. I watched 3 words erase 12 years. Then Celia stepped beside me and said quietly, "For what it's worth, everyone on staff knows whose work this is." I looked at her. "Thank you." She nodded. "And our legal manager is reviewing the documents." I did not ask if she had called anyone. I had learned by then to let competent people be competent. Dinner began at 6:30. By 7:15, the room was warm with wine and speeches. Marissa's father spoke first. He cried while saying his daughter had always dreamed of a day like this. Brandon's best man told a story about college that made Brandon sound mischievous instead of irresponsible. My father stood next. He looked proud, really proud. That may have been the hardest part. He lifted his glass and said, "Brandon, your mother and I have watched you grow into a man of integrity." Integrity? I looked down at the folder in my lap. Elise sat at the vendor table near the back, her laptop bag by her feet. Chloe sat with the bridal party, pale and rigid. Celia stood near the wall, speaking quietly into an earpiece. My father continued, "You've always had big dreams, son. And today, seeing this room, this beautiful wedding, this family gathered together, I know those dreams are only beginning." Brandon smiled like a prince. Then he stood. He took the microphone and thanked everyone. His bride, her parents, the groomsmen, the venue, the photographer, the florist, the band, the planner. Then he looked toward the dessert table. "And of course, Natalie," he said, grinning. "Thanks for the cupcakes, Nat. Try not to turn this into free advertising." Laughter. Smaller this time, but enough. He added, "What can I say? My sister has always been useful." There it was. The second time in 24 hours. Useful. I stood, not quickly, not dramatically. I simply stood with the folder in my hands and walked toward the microphone. Brandon saw me coming. His smile tightened. "Natalie," he said softly. "Adi away from the mic." "Don't." I smiled. "Don't embarrass you." His eyes sharpened. "This is not the time." I took the microphone from its stand. "No," I said. "This is exactly the time." The room quieted. 240 guests turned toward me. My mother's face went white. My father set down his glass. Marissa looked annoyed at first, not frightened, not yet. I faced the room. Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Natalie Mercer, Brandon's sister. I'm also the owner of Mercer Rye Bakery, the local bakery that provided tonight's dessert table. A murmur moved through the guests. Some turned to look at the desserts. I continued. I was asked to provide the cake and dessert table as a wedding gift. I agreed. The retail value of that gift was $14,700. Brandon laughed into the silence. Natalie, come on. I did not look at him. This morning, when I arrived at the Hawthorne estate, I was told my business had an outstanding balance of $8,600 for kitchen access, refrigeration, staging, and cleanup fees. I opened the folder. This confused me because I never agreed to those charges. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I pulled out the contract. Then I was shown this document. It lists Mercer Rye Bakery as responsible for those fees. At the bottom is a signature that is supposed to be mine. I held it up. It is not mine. The room shifted. You can feel a room change when entertainment becomes evidence. Brandon stepped toward me. Okay. That's enough. Celia moved from the wall and stood near the edge of the dance floor. I continued. The upload record from the Hawthorne estate shows this contract was submitted through the wedding portal by Brandon Mercer. I turned slightly toward Celia. Ms. Ward, is that correct? Celia did not hesitate. Yes, she said clearly. The document was uploaded under Mr. Brandon Mercer's vendor access. Brandon's face flushed. Marissa turned to him. What is she talking about? He waved a hand. It was a billing mix-up. I removed the next page. It was not a billing mix-up. After reviewing my business accounts with my bookkeeper, we found unauthorized charges and vendor obligations routed through Mercer Rye Bakery totaling $86,240. Gasps moved through the room like wind through dry leaves. My mother stood. Natalie, stop this. I looked at her. Mom, you'll be included in a moment. She sat down, not because she wanted to, because people were looking at her. I lifted the next set of papers. These charges include floral deposits, transportation, lighting, event insurance, open bar surcharges, custom favors, kitchen fees, and other wedding expenses, all connected to my business without my authorization. Brandon grabbed for the microphone. I stepped back. Celia stepped forward. Sir, she said, do not touch her. That was the first time fear crossed his face. Not guilt, fear. The room noticed. Oh, Brandon raised his hands. Everybody relax. Natalie is upset. We had an arrangement. I looked at him. Did we? Yes, he snapped. You knew we were going to reimburse you. No, I said. I knew I was making your dessert table as a gift. I did not know you were using my business as a credit line. He laughed. A short, ugly laugh. Credit line? You're being dramatic. I opened the folder again. This is an exported group chat called Wedding Rescue Team. The room went quiet in a new way, a sharper way. Chloe closed her eyes. Marissa stared at me. In this group chat, I said, Brandon discusses using my vendor login. My mother says, don't make it sound like stealing. She can afford it. She has no kids. Every head turned toward my mother. She looked like she had been caught holding a match beside a burning house. I continued. My father says, your sister has always been better with money. She'll figure it out. My father looked down. And Marissa says, as long as the estate gets paid, I'm not walking into a cheap wedding. Marissa's mouth opened. I didn't mean, I looked at her. You meant it enough to type it. Someone at the back whispered, oh my God. Brandon pointed at Chloe. You showed her? Chloe stood, shaking. Yes. He stared at her. You had no right. Chloe's voice trembled but held. You had no right to steal from your sister. That was the first open crack in Brandon's wall. I looked back at the guests. There is also a message from Brandon that says, Nat won't notice if we run some charges through the bakery account. She never checks until month end. I paused. Then I looked directly at my brother. You were wrong. The silence after that sentence felt almost clean. My father finally stood. "Enough," he said. "Natalie, this is still your brother's wedding." I turned to him. "No, Dad, this is still my business." He flinched. "You are humiliating this family." I nodded. "Then you understand how it feels." His mouth closed. I continued. "You taught Brandon that I would always pay. Tonight I am teaching him that I won't." My mother started crying. Not quiet tears, public tears, the kind meant to redirect the room. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered. I looked at her for a long moment. "Help is asked for," I said. "Theft is hidden." Brandon's mask slipped. "Oh, please," he said. "You act like you're some struggling single mother. You own a business. You don't have kids. You don't have a mortgage like us. You don't understand pressure." I almost smiled. There it was. The real argument. Not that he did not steal, that he deserved to. I said, "I have 8 employees who depend on payroll clearing. I have rent, insurance, taxes, supplier invoices, delivery vehicles, health stipends, slow seasons, repairs, debt. And yes, Brandon, I do understand pressure. I just don't treat other people's bank accounts like an exit." A few guests clapped once or twice before realizing no one knew what kind of moment this was. Brandon's face twisted. "You've always thought you were better than me." "No," I said. "I kept hoping you would become better than this." Marissa stood. "Brandon," she said, voice shaking, "tell me this isn't real." He turned toward her. "Marissa, I was handling it." That phrase. I saw Elise look up from the back of the room, handling it, not denying it, handling it. Marissa heard it too. "What does that mean?" He lowered his voice. "Not here." I said, "Actually, here is perfect." Brandon turned on me. "Shut up, Natalie." The room recoiled. Not because shut up is the cruelest thing a person can say, because it sounded like the voice beneath the charm. I opened the final section of the folder. "Marissa, there is something else." Her face drained. "What?" I held up a copy of the deposit image. "Your grandmother wrote a check for $25,000. Memo line, house down payment." Marissa's grandmother, seated near the front in a lavender dress, leaned forward. "I did." I looked at her. "Mrs. Vale, did you know the check was deposited into Brandon's personal account?" The elderly woman's face hardened. "No," Marissa whispered. "What?" I placed the copy on the nearest table and slid it toward her. 2 days after the deposit, part of that money was paid to a company called Pinnacle Sports Analytics. Brandon lunged toward the paper. Celia's security staff stepped in. I continued. "It is not analytics. It is a betting platform." The room exploded. Not loudly at first. It started as whispers. Then chairs scraped. Marissa picked up the paper with both hands. "Brandon," she said, barely audible, "did you gamble my grandmother's money?" He looked around the room, searching for a face that still belonged to him. My mother. My father. The groomsmen. Marissa. No one gave him one. "I was fixing it," he snapped. The words left his mouth and died in the air. I watched him hear himself. I watched Marissa hear him. I watched every guest understand that he had just admitted enough. Marissa removed her engagement ring first, then her wedding band. The ceremony had been less than 4 hours earlier. She placed both on the table. "You stole from your sister," she said. "You stole from my grandmother. What else?" Brandon whispered. "Marissa, please." She shook her head. "What else?" He did not answer. That answer was enough. My mother stood again, desperate now. "This is not the way to handle family matters." I turned toward her slowly. "Mom, family matters are Sunday dinners, hospital visits, and who brings potato salad. Forged signatures are not family matters. Fraud is not a family matter. Using your daughter's company as a hiding place for your son's debt is not a family matter." She sobbed. "You're destroying him." "No," I said. "I am documenting him." That sentence landed harder than I expected. Maybe because everyone could see the folder. Maybe because everyone understood finally that I had not come with accusations. I had come with receipts. The venue's legal manager entered the ballroom from the side doors with 2 uniformed security officers. He spoke briefly with Celia, then approached me. "Ms. Mercer," he said quietly, "the sheriff's deputy is outside. We provided the document upload logs and your statement." Brandon heard the word deputy. His face changed completely. "What did you do?" I looked at him. "I protected my business." "You called the cops at my wedding?" "Elise called after confirming forged documents and unauthorized charges." He turned toward Elise. "You miserable." "Careful," Elise said from the back table. "I bill by the hour for court appearances." For one strange second, I almost laughed. Then a deputy entered the ballroom. He was calm, middle-aged, serious without being theatrical. "Brandon Mercer?" he asked. No one moved. Brandon looked at my parents. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked 20 years older. The deputy approached. "Mr. Mercer, we need to speak with you regarding allegations of fraud, forgery, and unauthorized use of business accounts." Brandon pointed at me. "She's lying." The deputy looked at the folder in my hands, then at Celia, then at the legal manager, then back at Brandon. "That may be discussed outside." Security escorted Brandon toward the side exit. He stopped beside me. His voice dropped low. "You'll regret this." I looked at him. "Documents don't have feelings, Brandon. They don't hold grudges. They just remember what people hoped would disappear." He stared at me with hatred. Then he was gone. The wedding did not resume. How could it? Music does not know what to do after fraud. The band packed quietly. Guests left in clusters, whispering beneath chandeliers. Marissa sat at the head table while her grandmother held her hand. My mother cried into a napkin while no one comforted her loudly enough to make it useful. My father approached me near the dessert table. For a second, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "You should have come to us privately." I looked at him. "I did not know privately was available to me. You were in the group chat." He looked away. "That was different." "No," I said. "That was evidence." He had no answer. My staff boxed the late-night cinnamon rolls because no one wanted them anymore. Lena asked if we should leave the cake. I looked at it. 4 tiers, smooth buttercream, white sugar roses, perfectly level, the kind of cake brides cry over. "Take it," I said. Marissa heard me. She looked up. "Please," she said, voice hoarse. "Donate it. I don't want anything from today." So we did. The next morning, the cake was delivered in pieces to a women's shelter downtown. That felt right. Something beautiful made from a ruined day still fed someone. The weeks after the wedding were not satisfying in the way people imagine revenge is satisfying. They were exhausting. Police reports, bank disputes, merchant investigations, supplier calls, legal consultations, credit freezes, password resets, statements, invoices, more statements. I learned that proving theft is work. Even when you have the truth, you still have to organize it into a language institutions understand. Elise helped me build the master file. Tab 1, forged venue contract. Tab 2, upload logs. Tab 3, business card charges. Tab 4, merchant account login records. Tab 5, group chat export. Tab 6, vendor invoices. Tab 7, check deposit from Marissa's grandmother. Tab 8, betting platform transaction. Tab 9, witness statements from Chloe and Celia. At Tab 10, estimated damages and recovery status. Every tab was a brick in the wall between me and my family's version of events. Brandon was charged with forgery, fraud, and identity-related financial crimes. His attorney tried to frame it as a family misunderstanding. The group chat made that difficult. Marissa filed for annulment. Her grandmother pursued a separate civil claim for the $25,000. My parents called me 17 times in the first week. I did not answer. My mother texted, "Your brother is not sleeping." Then, "This is killing your father." Then, "Families are supposed to forgive." I finally replied, "Families are also supposed not to steal." She did not respond for 3 days. When she did, she wrote, "You have become cold. I stared at that message while sitting in my bakery office at 2:14 a.m., surrounded by bank statements, with a supplier threatening to freeze deliveries because my account had been flagged for disputed charges. Cold. That was what they called me because I was no longer available to be robbed warmly. The bank reversed some charges quickly. Others took months. 2 vendors fought the disputes because, from their perspective, services had been provided. The venue refunded the forged fees after their legal department completed its review. Mercer and Rye survived. Barely. For 3 months, I did not take a paycheck. I covered payroll first because my employees had not been invited into my family drama. They had rent, children, car payments, dental bills, lives. Lena offered to delay her paycheck. I told her never to offer that again. Elise reduced her bookkeeping invoice without telling me. I found out and paid the difference 6 months later. Celia referred 2 weddings to me, then 4, then 6. Word spread quietly through the wedding industry. Not the tabloid version, not the dramatic version, the vendor version. A bakery owner caught forged contracts at a luxury wedding and still delivered perfectly. That reputation did more for Mercer and Rye than any ad campaign I could have bought. Brides began asking for me by name. Venues respected my contracts. I updated every system. 2-factor authentication, separate vendor accounts, no shared devices, legal review for large events, deposit protections, authorization protocols. Elise called it the Brandon Firewall. I kept the name. Marissa came into the bakery 5 months after the wedding. I saw her through the front window before she opened the door. She looked different without bridal polish. Hair in a low ponytail, no makeup, jeans and a navy sweater. She held a small envelope in both hands. Lena looked at me. "Want me to tell her you're busy?" I shook my head. Marissa approached the counter. "Hi, Natalie." "Marissa," she swallowed. "I'm not here to make excuses." "That would be wise." She nodded. "I knew some charges were being moved around. Brandon told me your family had an arrangement. I should have asked you. I didn't, because I wanted the wedding more than I wanted the truth." That was the first honest thing anyone connected to that wedding had said to me. She placed the envelope on the counter. "It's not much, $3,000. My grandmother wanted to send more, but I told her this part was mine." I did not touch it right away. Why? Because when I said I wasn't walking into a cheap wedding, I became cheap. Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." I believed her. Not because apology fixes damage, because real remorse does not ask to be excused before it admits what it did. I accepted the envelope. "Thank you." She nodded and left. That was the last time I saw Marissa for nearly a year. Brandon took a plea deal, restitution, probation, a suspended sentence with conditions, financial monitoring, community service, mandatory gambling treatment. My mother called the day after the hearing. This time I answered. She did not say hello. "Well, he has a record now." I was standing in the bakery kitchen watching Lena teach a new employee how to fold croissant dough. "Yes," I said. "He will carry that forever." "So will I." Silence. Then she said, "You could have stopped it before it got there." I closed my eyes. There is a special exhaustion that comes from realizing someone still believes the consequence is worse than the crime. "Mom," I said, "I did stop it. That is why it got there." She began to cry. Quietly this time, not for a room, for herself. I don't know how we became this family. I looked at the stainless steel table in front of me, at the flour dust, at the dough, at the employees moving around a business my family had called cute while trying to drain it dry. "I do," I said. "We became this family every time Brandon did something wrong and you made someone else pay for it." She did not deny it. That mattered. A little. My father came to the bakery 9 months after the wedding. It was a Saturday morning in spring, the kind of morning when the line reached the sidewalk and the whole shop smelled like coffee, butter, and orange glaze. I saw him standing near the door in his old brown jacket, looking confused by the crowd. He had not been inside since before the wedding. Back then, he had treated the place like a hobby room with a cash register. Now he watched customers order birthday cakes, breakfast boxes, wedding tastings, espresso drinks, and take-home pastries. He watched Lena direct staff. He watched a delivery driver load branded boxes into a van. He watched me sign off on an invoice from a hotel group. When the rush slowed, he approached the counter. "Hi, Nat." "Dad." He looked around. "This is busy." "It usually is on Saturdays." He nodded. "I didn't know." I said nothing. He looked toward the kitchen. "I didn't know it was this serious." There it was. Not an apology, but the doorway to one. I wiped my hands on a towel. "It was always serious," I said. "You just called it cute." His face tightened. For a second, I thought he would defend himself. He did not. He looked down. "You're right." 2 words. Small, late, but real. I wanted them to fix more than they could. That is the hard part of finally receiving the admission you needed. It does not travel back in time. It does not unspend the money. It does not unmake the laughter at the rehearsal dinner. It does not give you the years you wasted trying to become worthy in rooms where worth was assigned before you entered. But it does something. It marks the place where denial stopped. "I'm sorry," he said. I studied his face. "For what?" He swallowed. "For letting your mother and me treat Brandon's problems like your responsibility." That answer was specific, so I accepted it. Not fully, not permanently, but for that moment. "Thank you," I said. He bought a cinnamon roll and ate it alone at a corner table. Before he left, he looked at the display case and said, "Your grandmother would have loved this place." That one hurt, because it was true. My mother sent flowers on the 1-year anniversary of the wedding. White roses. The card said, "We are proud of you." I read it twice. Then I placed the flowers in my office, not the front window. Some apologies are too late for display. Some relationships do not return to what they were, and some should not. Brandon never apologized. Not really. He sent a letter through his attorney expressing regret for the confusion and financial stress caused by the wedding billing issues. Elise read it and said, "I've seen warmer appliance warranties." I filed it under restitution. The payments came slowly. $400 1 month, $200 the next, nothing for 3 months, then $600 after a court reminder. I stopped waiting for his money to feel whole. That was another kind of freedom. A 1.5 years after the wedding, Mercer and Rye opened a second kitchen space for wholesale production, not a second storefront. Not yet, but a bigger kitchen with proper loading access, refrigeration that did not sound haunted, and enough room for my staff to work without bumping elbows during wedding season. On opening morning, Lena brought coffee. Elise brought a label maker because she said every emotional milestone requires proper organization. Celia sent a card with 3 new venue referrals. Chloe, who had left Marissa's social circle after the wedding, came by with flowers and cried when she saw the new ovens. I stood in the center of that kitchen and thought about the ballroom, the laughter, the word useful, the forged signature, the folder in my hands. For so many years, I believed the opposite of being rejected was finally being chosen by the people who hurt me. I was wrong. The opposite of being rejected is choosing yourself. Not dramatically, not cruelly, not with revenge fantasies or speeches you practice in the shower. Sometimes choosing yourself is changing passwords, printing documents, calling your bookkeeper, standing at a microphone with steady hands, refusing to let people call theft a misunderstanding because they share your last name. My family used to say I was useful. They were right in one way. I was useful. I was useful to employees who needed fair pay, useful to brides who trusted me with once-in-a-lifetime days, useful to vendors who respected clean contracts, useful to the woman I used to be, the one who thought endurance was love. But I was never supposed to be useful at my own expense. That was the lesson. The bakery did not become real when my father finally saw the line out the door. It did not become real when the wedding industry started referring clients. It did not become real when the bank reversed the charges. It was real when I stood alone in a church kitchen 12 years earlier, scraping burnt sugar from a sheet pan and deciding to try again the next morning. It was always real. They just called it cute because calling it real would have required respecting me. And respect was the one bill my family never wanted to pay. So I stopped extending credit. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever been called dramatic for defending what you built or selfish for refusing to be used, I hope you remember this. People who benefit from your silence will always call your proof an attack, but documents do not yell. Receipts do not seek revenge. Truth does not need to be cruel. It only needs to arrive on time.